Welcome to the Black Sparrow Media Internet Broadcast Network.
You are listening to Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a podcast about Linux, open source, and amateur radio, for everyone. Now here are your hosts, Cheryl, W5MOO, Russ, K5TUX, and Bill, NE4RD.
Well, hello everybody and welcome. You have tuned in to episode number 561 of Linux in the Ham Shack, the most terrific amateur radio podcast on the internet. And this is a deep dive episode, so thanks for being here. We actually have a deep dive queued up for the next deep dive too, assuming we can get Bill to actually get through the topic. But I was able to dig one up for tonight. It's actually a new project for me. Bill says he's used it some. So it should be a good topic, and I know there's lots of people out there who use it, but I've heard a lot more about it in the past few weeks and months than I have in the past, so we will touch on it for sure and let you all know about HamClock. But before we talk about HamClock, we will introduce ourselves, and for the on assignment Cheryl, W5MOO, I'm Russ, K5TUX.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD.
All right, so this is, like I just said, something that I've been hearing a lot more about lately. We have talked about it previously on the show, and I know I've seen it, but I've never really used it. And I think the thing that turned me off from it at the very beginning was the fact that it was called HamClock, and it was like it's a kiosk-y type application. And I kind of thought it was just a clock. So it was like, there's lots of those out there. Who needs another clock? Well, it turns out that HamClock is far from just a clock. It does a great many things, and we're going to talk about all those things. Before we talk about all the things it can do, let's talk about how it's licensed. And the fact that it shows up on our show here is great because it's open source. It's MIT licensed, so that's as open source as it gets. It basically means you can do anything you want with it at all, anytime, anywhere, any place. No restrictions, pretty much. Not even copy left. You don't even have to put your code back in. So I guess I should switch back here, because there's people chatting
Already, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll keep an eye on the chat for you.
Okay, good deal. Because I've got several windows open, because I actually have the install script running in another window, so I can sort of walk myself back through it and explain how it goes. Basically, there's a few different ways that HamClock can be used. It's kind of designed for portability, so it can be run on a Raspberry Pi. It can be run via the web as a web application. It can even be installed on like Arduino kits. So you can have like a screen with an Arduino, and you can actually hook it into like hardware GPS clocks and all kinds of crazy business like that, which we're not really going to get into because I'm only done the sort of desktop version of this. But the functionality is certainly there. And the way I used it was the web method. And that's so that I can have access to it from all of my machines here on my local network. And of course, it actually listens on your main interfaces, so you could actually access your web clock externally. There are some caveats to that. It runs on 3 different ports, 8080, 8081, and 8082, all of which can be changed. But one of the instances is read-only. That's the 8082. One of the instances is read-write. That's 8081. And one of the instances is a RESTful API, and that runs on port 8080. So you should adjust your firewalls accordingly so that you have access to the parts of this that you want to if you're running the web version. If you're running on Raspberry Pi or desktop or anything like that, of course, it will just be a local application. Of course, you can run the web version on a Pi too. seriously considering doing that, actually. And that will give you access to, from other machines as well. So the build of this is really pretty simple, at least on the desktop. It's you download the source code. It comes as a zip file or a TGZ. I did not dig in to see if they had a Git repo. So they may not. But they do provide the source code as a tarball. So I just unpack the tarball. And the instructions say when type make help to show you the options that you have. When you do that, it does show you the options that you have. And then you do a make, choose your poison, basically. It will build, and then you will have an executable. I, of course, built mine on my Manjaro machine. It's written in C++. It obviously has some sort of graphic framework that it uses. I did not bother to check which. So anytime Bill wants to fill in any of these details, he can.
I'm playing with mine.
It's okay. So basically, once you get the executable, and in my case, it's the web executable, you just start it. You run it as an application. Now, if you're running the desktop version, it will run as a local application, and you'll be presented with a GUI configuration menu on your local machine. If you're running it via the web version, you will be presented with that configuration screen via the web site. And the place you want to go for that is your host :/live.html. When it first starts up, it gives you 10 seconds to click on the screen if you have already configured it in order to enter the configuration mode. If it has not been previously configured, it will just jump straight into configuration mode. And it's basically you just walk through the different configuration screens. I believe there are 6 of them. And it's a point-and-click interface. It looks very raster graphic-y. So if you remember the old arcade game Tempest or Major Havoc or any of those ones that used vectors, use vectors like Star Wars, Tempest, stuff like that. It has a very look and feel like those things. And it's kind of like you just click on the areas you want to configure, or you can use tab to go, or it even has a virtual keyboard, because this could be done via Raspberry Pi or something like that may be headless and not actually have interface devices. So you have that option as well. And of course, touchscreens will also work. So basic configuration is you start with your call sign, you enter that. You can enter a grid square and it will figure out your Latin long, or you can enter your Latin long and it will figure out your grid square. You can enable or not a hardware GPS. You can also enable NMEA. This is one of the ones you're going to have to help me with.
NMEA?
Yeah, it says use NMEA.
Oh, NMEA.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's like an external GPS device.
Yes, I'm looking this up now. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. You can also use geolocation, which means it will try and figure out what your grid square and lat long are from your IP address, which of course is going to be wrong. And then you have to set up your NTP, which means you can use NTP if you want to. You can use your computer as your NTP source. You can use an NTP clock built into your device. Like if your Pi or Arduino is connected to an NTP source, you can do that. Or you can use no NTP.
Dan's got you on the NMEA. It's an acronym for National Marine Electronics Association. It's an system that existed before GPS was invented, so it predates GPS.
Yeah, so you got lots of options there. And once you've filled out that first screen, you go to the second screen, and this is where you can turn on or off access to a DX cluster. I would highly recommend turning that on. And you can put in the port, login, and host of a DX cluster. And then on your watch options, you can select if there's things you want to filter for, filter against, highlight, and stuff like that. And it can be very robust as far as accessing data from a DX cluster. And you will get live spots doing that. There's also an option for turning on WSJTX, and I have no idea what that actually does. I don't have it turned on, even though I'm using JTDX. It's using WSJTX as your DX cluster, but I don't know how that works. So that'll be one of those features we'll just skip for now. On the third page, you can enable rotor control. You can enable rig control. You can connect to FL rig. You can say what those things do, whether they control your rig, monitor your rotator, or just whatever. And then there's a couple of options for ADIF watching, and ONTA watching, ONTA, which I don't know what that is either. So anybody wants to fill in those gaps, feel free. I don't know how it accesses those files. If you select yes for ADIF, it wants a file, so I assume it wants a list of your contacts and stuff like that, which will probably be used to cross-reference for useful things, but I'm not doing it, so again, no idea. On page 4 is one that I have no idea. It says map center longitude, which is defaulted to 0 east, i.e., at the meridian there, the thing that's like off the western coast of Africa. It starts at 00. So when the map first fires up, that's where it's centered at. And then it asks if you want an I2C file, and I don't know what that is either. So if anybody wants to fill in that gap, go for
it. You're just having all kinds of fun with this. You shouldn't even mention it, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up with you here. I just found the WSJTX stuff inside of the code. It actually creates a UDP server to pick up UDP messages. So it'll take forwards from your installation instance.
Okay, I kind of thought that was what it would be, but I didn't set up a second forward out of WSJTX because it's done multicast. Yeah, so I could have done that, but I did not. And again, the I2C India 2 Charlie file, don't know what that is. So
that is that's a specific bridge for USB. Must be a very USB serial device. What is it? IC2C driver. It's for a very specific board here. It looks like it's a easy open source tool for controlling I2C devices over USB. So it must be an interface to connect to other devices. So I'm assuming that's probably to read things, kind of like a GPIO.
Okay, fair enough. So if that's something you need, it's available to you. And then page 5 gives you a bunch of just miscellaneous options, including how your dates are displayed, what day is the start of the week, whether you want imperial or metric units, showing your public IP address, how you want your spots labeled, whether you just want a call sign, no label, or a dot, or if you just want the prefix of the call, if you're a prefix hunter. Scrolling direction shows bottom up or top down. Should be fairly obvious, or at least it will be when we get to the part of this where it displays information that actually scrolls. Pane rotation. There are 4 panes at the top of the screen once you get past this configuration and you're actually looking at the interface for HamClock. And you can set the 4 different panes to have multiple bits of information in them, and this is how often those bits of information will rotate if you have more than one. You can set it anywhere from 5 seconds up to a minute. Defaults to 30. Auto Space X map, or Space Weather Map, Auto Space Weather Map. You can have that on or off. It allows you to do auto full screen in the web version. You can turn that on or off. Log usage, you can either opt into it or opt out of it. You can put on demo mode, so this is like when you're showing your friends how it works. You can turn on demo mode. You can set your bearings to either magnetic north or true north. It defaults to true north. It allows you to turn on weather information for local and remote stations. You can either enable or disable that. You can turn on spot paths, which I turn off. I don't want to have all those lines drawn all over my map. You can enable grayscale if you want to. You can turn on how often your map rotates if you have multiple viewing options for your map. It defaults to 90 seconds. And you can have bio lookups via QRZ, HamCall, CQQRZ, or none at all. And then the last page is just colors. You can make things colored in your own private way. There's lots of sensible defaults there. You can have PSK Reporter options that are similar to the way PSK Reporter displays. You can have some you can switch back and forth between, but you can more or less leave that alone. and you'll kind of figure out how the colors work. All right, so after you've gone through all of that, then it will start up, and you'll have access, in my case, to the web version, and it's doing NTP syncing and all kinds of crazy stuff from the background right now, and I have my computer right here that I'm recording on showing HamClock, or at least it will once it fires up. So there it goes. All right. So it starts up with 4 panes across the top, an upper left pane, which has your call sign and the date and time in it. And then down on the left-hand side, you have the DE box, which is like your local box, i.e. DE is more than likely you, and DX, which is the remote box, which is more than likely a station that you're trying to contact. So let's see, how did I organize this in the Etherpad? The DE area. Okay, we'll start with that. It's very easy to identify. It's right underneath the call sign and time on the left-hand side. It's got a big DE, and it defaults to your current location or whatever you put in for the DE data when you configured it, probably your lat long. So the way this works is because it's sort of a kiosk-style application is anytime you want to change something, you basically need to click or tap in the area of the thing you want to change. Be aware, however, that some of the areas of the screen do different things. So, clicking on the left side of a box may do something, clicking on the right side of the box may do something, clicking on the center of the box may do something, so on. I figured all of this out myself just by basically clicking on stuff. So I'm assuming you can do the same. So the way this defaults on my screen is I have a map that shows the gray line with anything that is in night mode and anything that is in day mode, which quite honestly looks awesome. I love it. The first thing I did, though, was I changed from country style to terrain style because terrain is just really cool. But anyway, I said I was going to start with the DE box. So the DE box just gives you information about yourself, like what the time and date is, where you are, what your grid square is, what your lat long is. But if you click on the DE, you can change that to an analog clock, a digital clock, or you can actually have the left side of the screen say current contests. That might be useful to you. One of the upper panes could also be set to show current contests as well. So depending on how you want to organize your screen, that's some of the things you can do. The DX screen shows DX information, and that will show basically DX information for something you have selected. If you go over to the map and hover over the different stations that are shown on the map, if you click on one of them, then the information for that station will be shown in the DX pane. Now, if you click in the DX pane, it brings up the satellite tracker mode. So you can see all of the amateur radio satellites that are available. You can click on those. You can only click on one at a time, but you can click on that. And then in the DX pane, it will show you a polar map of the satellite passes. So if you're a satellite operator, that could be very, very handy to you. And it will also show you where the satellite is on the map as well. So you can see where it's passing over and whatnot. Or if it's below the horizon, it will show you when it will actually be showing up on the map for you. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, already way past clock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is G predict in here as well, right?
Right. So yeah, all kinds of stuff on here. All right. So in the upper left, above the DE and the DX panes, you have your call sign, or at least it shows your call sign at first. If you click on your call sign, it will change your call sign's color. If you click to the right of your call sign, it will change that area's background. And it will also allow you to set PTT commands and a title. So if you want to say like, amazing ham operator and have that shown up in that box instead of your call sign, you can do that if you want. If you click on the time and date, you can have it show different kinds of dates. You can have it show Julian dates, sidereal dates, solar dates, Unix seconds since the epoch, and all kinds of crazy stuff. One thing that's kind of interesting is right under your call sign, there's a line that shows some diagnostic data. It'll show how long the app's been running, what IP address it's running, what your CPU heat status is. And there's a version of HamClock shown as well, right above the TC. And if you click on that, it will check to see if there's a newer version available. And if there is, it will download and install it for you. Yeah, lots of stuff you can do with this thing. Let's see, where are we going next? Top panes. Okay, there's 4 panes across the top. There's 3 wide panes, I'll call them, and 1 narrow pane. Now, each of these can be configured to do different things. Not all of them can be configured to do all the same things, but if you want to configure them, basically you just have to click in the top of the pane, and you'll see all of the options. Some of the options include Aurora data, BZBT, which someone's going to have to tell me what that means, contests, DRAP, which I don't know what that is either. You can see the DX station weather in a pane. You can see the moon phase. You can see NOAA's space weather. You can see on the air, which we'll talk about that in a second. It literally has to do with SOTA, POTA, IOTA, stuff like that. You can see the K index, SDO, solar flux, solar winds, sunspots, X-ray. Yeah, craziness. All this stuff is in here. And you can set any one or multiples of things in any of those panes. If you have 1, it will just show that thing. If you have 2, 3, 4, 5, or 7, it will rotate through the various things in that pane. And that was the thing that in the setup we talked about, where it was talked about pane rotation, and it's defaulted to 30 seconds. So if you have 6 different options selected for a pane, then every 30 seconds it will rotate to the next thing. And you can set all of those things, or pretty much all of those things, for each of the 3 wide panes at the top. And then once your thing is up, once your thing has been configured, then if you click sort of in the middle of the pane, that will give you the configuration options for each of the panes that it's showing you. So like for live spots, you can say whether it's spotting for your station or for the remote station, the timeout for the station, frequencies, stuff like that. For DX clustering, you can filter on stations. You can order by time. Basically, all of the options are available to you once you click the or once you have the pane displaying the information you want to see. One of the panes that I think is the most interesting is the vocap pane. I think we're all aware, or if you're not, you're going to soon know that vocap allows you to see the usable frequencies for stations. It outlines in a nice little graph like what kind of frequencies will be available to you. And at the bottom, you can select your station's operating parameters. You can say what your power output is, what mode you're using, your takeoff angle, whether you're using short path or long path. And once you set that to the proper variables, it will show you on a little block graph what the usability of your signal will be. And then, to be really cool, if you click on whatever band you're using, for example, 40 meters, then it will build a vocap propagation map and show it to you in the map pane. It will give you a reliability index for where your signal will go for the parameters you set and the band you're operating on, which is really cool. Now, one thing I will point out about that is the map is also a pane that can rotate. There was an option when you started the application up. It defaults to 90 seconds. And then if you click in the map configuration, there's a little button in the upper left of the map. If you generate one of those vocap reliability indexes, it will add it to your map. So when you see the drop down, you'll see that there are 2 things enabled now. One is, for me, terrain, could be countries for you, and then the 40-meter reliability map. And every 90 seconds, it will rotate through those. You can also add other things. You can add lat-long information to the map. You can add ITU zones, CQ zones, grids, time zones, all kinds of stuff like that. You can turn off night mode if you want to. And it's just, there's so much you can do with this thing. It's like crazy. I can talk about it for a long time. One thing I will say, though, is like when you're looking at the map, wherever your mouse pointer is, whatever it's hovering over, it will show you data for that position. If you're hovering over nothing, it will show you the lat, long, CQ zone, ITU zone, local time, the prefixes associated for the given area, the grid square, your short path direction, the distance from you, your DE station, and the local weather, wherever your pointer is pointed. And if you're pointed to a station, it will show you what the station is, their grid square, and I believe if you click on it, you can do a lookup as well. One thing I will point out is that on the map, circle stations are, circle stations are like for your on the air and DX cluster notifications, and square icons are for spots. So you can differentiate between those two things. And then the last pane in the far right, the narrow pane, that starts as NXDXF, which has spotter beacons that it monitors. I don't know how, but it does. And it will show you, I'm not actually sure what it's showing you when you see those beacons. It does seem to change as far as I think the coloration of the beacon is related to the reliability index from VOACAP. So it'll show you like your ability, I guess, your reliability to the beacon for each band to give you an idea of what kind of band conditions there are. And you can also have space weather, local weather, and your DX station weather in there as well. And of course, it will rotate if you have multiple things selected, like it does for everything. Let's see. Did I get through all the map stuff? I'm not even going back to the thing. I'm just like, I think I did get through all that. Okay, so the map. Yeah, we talked about mostly what's shown on the map, but then the map itself can also be customized. You can change the projection of the map. You can use a Mercator projection or Robinson projection. What are the different projections on here? Robinson, Azimuth 1, Azimuthal, and Mercator, depending on how you want to view our lovely planet here. And it will show you the propagation lines and the reliability indices and all that stuff on however you have the map projected. You can see weather information, like from NOAA. You can see auroral information. You can see MUF information out of VOACAP. And then you can, of course, outline different grids and stuff, Maidenhead and so on. So super highly flexible. I'm watching the map sort of flip back and forth as I'm talking here between the day-night gray line map and the VOACAP map. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, this thing is like crazy busy with stuff. So yeah, so I can click on a station that's showing up on here. Let's see, this is 8 Romeo 1 Tango Mike. If I click on that, I can set it as my DX station. Like I'm going to try and contact it, and I can zoom in on it. And when I zoom in, it shows it up in Northern Africa, and it shows me it's in grid square GJ06, shows who spotted it, shows the local time, the short path direction, how far away it is from me, and the local weather. It's apparently cloudy and 65 degrees in Northern Africa. And yeah, so that is pretty cool. And again, some of the features, like the fact that it has the ability to connect to rig control and stuff like that, I'm not sure how you access that information, but it is available to you. And apparently something about HamClock can do actual rig control. So somehow it's hooked into rig control D and can actually change things if you want it to. And one thing I found out sort of towards the end of playing around with this is if your panes show data that is bigger than what it can actually display inside the pane, next to the title bar, there will be a little arrow with either an up or a down arrow. And you click on that, and that will scroll through the data in the pane. So if you have like 60 lines of data, because it only shows about 8 at a time, you can just scroll through. So that's why ordering your data is probably important. You know, if you're clusters, you might want to order by time. If you're doing spotting, you might want to order by band, something like that. And one thing I did want to jump back to was the on-the-air pane. That was something that they've added recently in the 4.09 version. That allows you to see actively what band and mode different on-the-air stations are using, whether it's SOTA, POTA, IOTA, and it allows you to filter as well. You can say how long they'll age out. You can say what band you want to look at. You can use the filter, whether you want to use POTA, OTA, IOTA, SOTA, whatever. And then you can also filter out like, NWN K stations if you don't want America, stuff like that. So it allows you great control over, all of the data you're seeing and all of the things you're trying to hunt. And for something being called a clock, I think it's kind of like the cell phone thing. Like the thing people use a cell phone for least is a cell phone. And I kind of feel like the thing that people use HamClock for is a clock. I've been enjoying playing around with it. And I'm going to stop talking for a second, and let's see if Bill and the gallery here tonight can fill in any details that I've missed.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of playing with that as you were going through stuff, and there's definitely things that I never even looked at on this. Normally you see it pictured in people's shacks and stuff like that, already pre-set up, and normally I would say it probably sits on a static screen as more of kind of an informational panel, and then they probably have the pane set up to rotate for whatever information they want. Like you set it once, and then you kind of just always have it sort of as like an accessory to the station. I guess unlike what you would normally have with what's the DX grid tracker? Grid tracker, which is more of your interactive interface for your WSJTX/JTDX activities and whatnot, where you actually can control the radio and everything else through that. I suppose this has a little interconnectivity to the radio, probably to auto select, BOA cap stuff, possibly like which map you're on, which stuff you need. I was kind of just kind of digging through the code a little bit to kind of see some of that stuff, but haven't really got very far in deciphering some of the features that it looks like it can do. But I'm quite impressed with all the. I had, like I said, I'd used this like once, quite a long time ago on a tablet that I was basically going to use as an appliance, and just pretty much had the default interface set on here. And then to kind of go in here and see all of these subsections that you can have and flip between, from live spots to contest information to Aurora, even on the air stuff is on here too. Is quite interesting that you have it all sort of at your fingertip, and you can have it show up, especially the on the air stuff, right? That's probably a big one for people.
That's a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah. You just get a quick little snapshot, and you could have that up on a separate TV or an old tablet like I have mine, or if you have it on a Raspberry Pi, what have you. I guess the only weird thing would be just you have to compile it for the size you want. And I guess there's some static sizes available, and the web page is basically the same size. So the web page doesn't take advantage of the fact that the window of your web browser can be larger and smaller. The size of the screen is exactly the same, but the interactivity and controls feels exactly the same as the application. So that is kind of slick that you can do that. But it also opens up the fact that you can, set up like a 1080p thing, and then have like a 1080p website, and then you can drive that same map all over the place if you want it on a screen, or you just want it on a TV sometimes. It'd give you a lot of flexibility to kind of project that into multiple different places.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, Grid Tracker does contain a lot of the same information as HamClock does. I think I would use this in addition to Grid Tracker, because Grid Tracker is the thing that I'm going to use to like control the interface and sort of be right in my grill and the stuff that I'm looking at when I'm actually operating. But I would definitely have a separate screen, and I'm going to set up a separate screen for this with HamClock running, just so I can have like an overview of the stuff that I'm looking at, because I can set all this data to be like rotating through, and I have a screen that's sort of like above me, but sort of in my face. That's not my shack computer that I can just, if I'm working or something like that, I can glance up, and since everything can be filtered for something that I'm looking for, or it will show on the air station. So if I happen to want to hunt some POTA or something like that, I can have that right there. And this will also be available without having to have a separate tab like in a browser open for like the POTA.app thing, because this is presented in a much more concise and easy to read format. And it will show you like what modes and bands things are on, and even stuff that you wouldn't necessarily be looking for, which is really nice. And I love the fact that you can have so much information at your fingertips. And if you have these, panes set with like 5 different options and rotating every 10 seconds or so, there'll always be something you can see. And it's kind of really cool to see how the stations show up on the map. So, and I haven't really used vocap, even though it's a really helpful tool. But to me, this makes me want to use it. So I definitely will be, especially when I'm doing some of the, 10, 12, and 17 meter stuff, because it gives you a really good idea of where you're able to connect to, what the frequencies are, and what on the air stations are available. So
at least it'd give you like the theoretical side of that. I mean, well, as soon as you get it up on your, JTDX, and then you kind of see what's hearing you, you can almost compare and contrast from like theoretical limits to what you're actually seeing. So it might be an interesting experiment to kind of see the prediction versus the actuality of your propagation based upon, non-theoretical, antennas and stuff like that. You can only put in so much about your antenna.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's so much data being presented to you, and it's so customizable. Plus the layout is, even though you do have that sort of issue with not being able to like resize for your exact screen volumes or screen dimensions, it doesn't. I haven't noticed any, like, it doesn't bother me that there's like some like black bar space and stuff like that, because it just looks really pretty. And I am, like I said, I've only been using this like today, but I will be using it going forward, because I really like the data that it gives you. And once you kind of get used to the interface, like where you have to click on the different parts of the screen to get to the things you want to configure, and your filters and how you want it to look, that's about 10 or 15 minutes of just kind of playing around, trial and error. And after that, it's just really sweet. So I'm looking forward to basically having this always on when I'm in the shack. So
yeah, and you can if you have it in the web browser, and let's say you did use a smaller size or whatever, you can still zoom it in. It does respect the zooming in the web browser, so you get a little bit of pixelation and stuff like that from artifacting the image size changing and whatnot. But it seems to operate just fine. Like I just zoomed mine in and turned the web browser to full screen, and you can bring it pretty much. I zoomed it from the 800 to the 800 by 480 default to my 1440p screen on this computer, so, and it still looks fine.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is that the day-night map, with the gray line thing, is much better than the way Grid Tracker does it. Because on Grid Tracker you can see the gray line overlay, and it's like dimmed, or there's like a gray filter on the night areas. But this actually gives you a really good perception of the night areas and the twilight zones around the gray line. And I really, really like that. It looks great. And if you're actually wanting to show people this, like, if you're, working on your rig and you want to show them contacts and stuff like that, you want to see like what the world looks like and how the paths work and everything else, this is really nice. I really do like the display.
Yeah. Someone was comparing this to the Geocrons, which is a commercial solution for sort of a similar thing. I won't say it's the same thing, because it clearly is not. I mean, I've used an older Geocron, not even the brand new one, and that thing is, wow, whiz bang. Does quite a lot for what they've done, and you can tell that it's definitely a commercial piece of software. And the new one runs, it's tremendously more powerful. Like a lot of things can be tracked at once. You can do currents, you can do everything else. A lot of real-time things can be projected right on the map and rendered in the map. And I'm sure, with more commits and collaboration and stuff like that, this thing can, grow to that as well. But they're definitely not exactly the same thing. And I would think they're not technically competing with each other either. So
I haven't played around with the geochrons at all, so I have nothing to compare this to. But yeah, for a bit of MIT licensed open source software, there's been a lot of development put into this, and I know, like I said at the top of the show, that a lot of people that I've been hearing about this a lot, that a lot more people that I personally am aware of are using it as the code advances and as the feature set grows. So I'm sure it's going to become more and more relevant as time goes on. It's a great piece of software.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, that is all I have, actually, about HamClock. We'll have some links to some references and the manual and links to some kits in the show notes. So if you want to check out more about HamClock, please do that. I would say that if you're going to use it, you're probably going to have a dedicated screen for it. Because you're going to want to have access to the information it presents pretty much all the time, especially when you're operating. So you might want to plan for that. And, of course, you can use it on a tablet or a touchscreen device or something like that. So if you're out and about, like working POTA or something like that, and want to have access to it via your home web server on a tablet or something like that, that's certainly available to you as well. It responds well to touchscreen operation. So... yeah, very portable, very flexible, very usable. Always appreciate when software is done well. So that brings us down to the end of the show. I don't have any announcements and feedback. I'll ask Bill if he has anything he wants to announce or feedback.
Not that I can think of at the moment.
All right, very good. Well, we don't have a lot in the way of our social media roundup today, so I'll just let Bill run through it. It should only take a minute.
Sure, yeah. We had no new subscribers or Patreons this time. No Facebook, no Twitter, X. On YouTube, we had Keith, M0TVT, Victor Arazo, that's all one word, sorry, or Victor Arazo, one person, his name. I think I put too much space in there. Discord, we had Larry join us. No one on Instagram. On Mastodon, we had Al Pawka, and at CT1ETE, and at OH2CIL. No merchandise sales, no mailing list. But we did have some people here on the live chat tonight. They know we start on time now, right? So we had Steve, KJ5T, Mike, K6GTE, Tony, K4XSS, Dan, W4DPE, and Don, KB2YSI.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, whether you did so in the live show or whether you're going to listen to this when it comes out in the feed. We really appreciate everybody. If you have a couple of bucks a month, we could really use your support to keep the show going here and to keep us coming to those local events and the big event, Hamvention, because we want to make sure we see everybody at that, of course. And in the meantime, we'll send you off wishing you a great week and hope you'll join us again for our short topics episode next time around. And until then, we will sign off for now. And for the On Assignment Cheryl, W5MOO, we're going to close out this episode 561 of Linux in the Ham Shack. I'm Russ, K5TUX.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD73.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a community-sponsored podcast. Live recordings are Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Central Time. Our homepage can be found at lhspodcast.info. You can support the podcast via Patreon at patreon.com/LHS podcast. We're also on Discord, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and Mastodon. Contact us via email at info@lhspodcast.info or via voicemail at 190954777469. That's 1909 LHS show. We also have merch. So until next we meet, Remember to always heed your hedonism.